Sometimes you just have those weeks where you think, this is the life right here. This is what I have always wanted. It's like everything that you've been working for your entire life has led to this time. Now, I am not in the place I want to be. I am not exactly there yet. But I've learned some very important things about sync licensing this week. And since creating music that is useful for sync is my main focus, I'll be answering some questions that I had. Not that you, I'll answer questions you have too, but I'll be talking about some wins, some nice wins, and also some losses, which actually turned out to be wins. And then the general direction things seem to be going with both my sync licensing career, my career in general, my sync income, and my own music making, and kind of the trajectory of how I think things are going to go. A little music income science today, folks. But you need to know this. I made a conscious decision to move in this sync direction about 7 or 8 years ago and kind of move away from being just a music producer for clients and kind of get back to my music, the music I wanted to make. I didn't just look at sync like, oh, I'll just jump into this as another income stream, another little income stream on the side. No. When I heard that I could concentrate on making music for television, for movies, for games, and for advertisements, and make it one day a continuous royalty income that grew, I didn't even think about producing people for sync. I didn't even think about coaching or this channel or courses. And as you know, this channel isn't 100% focused on sync licensing. There are other channels like Jesse's, like Dave's, like Steve, tons of people who focus a little bit more on licensing. And it's one of the things. It is the biggest thing that I do, and it's the biggest thing that I focus on. But it is what I have always wanted my whole life, is a publishing deal. I wanted a publishing deal. I wanted to send my music off to publishers and have them do something with it. And I didn't want to go and do the artist thing. I've done 100 or 1,000 gigs, just as through my lifetime. And I didn't want to go out and do that and do the artist thing. I didn't want to necessarily put the pressure on sales of things, and now it's mainly streaming and music or advertising. I don't want to do the TikTok game and all that kind of stuff. That's just not what I'm interested in. I wanted to write songs. I wanted a music publishing deal where I submitted songs and my publisher found uses for them, or people found uses from finding that publisher. They went to that publisher looking for songs and they got it. Well, that's exactly what sync is now. It's just a publishing deal with a publisher who also might be called a library. And this library has all of these songs for people to come and find and use, especially people like music supervisors who are looking for the right song for the right moment in their television show. And that's what they find with sync. And I haven't just signed one publishing deal. I've signed many, dozens. And really only a handful, 5 to 10 really perform. There's many other libraries that I'm part of that you can't predict what they're going to do from day, or if they're even going to stay open, or if they're going to do anything with your music. And the proof is in the statements, and the proof is in the uses of your music on television. And the conversations and emails with these special publishers and libraries that I work with, it's just a blessing. But it's not a hobby. And success comes from constant work towards it. Not just a song or 10. I'm going to put some songs up on music libraries. No. It's not waiting for calls or money from libraries. It is sharing what you do with the world, putting yourself out there, playing well with others, sending emails, and keeping a conversation going, professional conversation, and basically working harder than the next person doing this. But today, let's focus on sync licensing and why it's more obvious than ever that this is what I want to do and maybe what you need to do for the rest of your life. The rest of my life. Speaking of that, welcome to the Make Music Income Podcast. My name is Eric Copeland, and I've made a full-time living as a music producer, composer, and arranger for over 25 years. In this podcast, I talk about making music income with music licensing, music production, music streaming, music royalties, being a music composer, arranger, producer, or artist, or really any way that I have in the past or currently now or want to make music income. I have free and paid courses and coaching and ebooks for you at makemusicincome.com/free. Make sure to like this podcast if you enjoy the content because it really helps, and subscribe if you're just finding the podcast or channel and want to be part of things every week. I hope all this content helps you make the music you love to make and make music income. Well, welcome to the podcast, everybody. Thanks for being here today. We're going to get into some interesting things today, and that is advances in sync. And yes, we're in for a little bit of something I like to call music income science. Yeah, in for some music income science today. We will be talking a little bit about numbers, but a little bit more about the science behind some of these things in sync. And so you're going to want to hang out for that. We're going to be talking about lots of things. And as a matter of fact, let's get to the very first thing I want to talk about today, and that is new partners. This is the most important thing that I think any of us can have, is new people to be working with on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. It's a life-changing thing. Just 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was in Nashville with one of my engineers who was an engineer I met before I moved to Nashville back in the early 2000s. And he said, you have to come to Nashville and track if you want to get to that next level. It will change your life. And it did. Absolutely. I tell him that story all the time. He's sick of hearing it. But he was the partner for me that helped me get to that next level. And still, and to be honest, all of that stuff in Nashville is very much part of why I've been so successful, I think, in sync. And there are people way more successful than me, but it's the reason for what success I've had. It's been life-changing. It's been the way that I stand out a lot of times. Yeah, for some reason, of course, from Nashville, working in Nashville for all those years, I'm the country guy, and I'm doing a lot of country music for libraries, and they really like it, and there's a lot of uses for it. But I think it's the next step for anybody. It is, we all have been trying to find that, who do I call? Who's the person who's going to make my career? We're always waiting for that one person who's going to make your career. And I wouldn't say that Ronnie, the engineer, made my career, but he certainly was a great next step and a new partner for me to move on to the next level. The whole point of what I'm talking about right now with new partners is I've had several people get in touch with me this week. Somebody did a coaching call with me yesterday. We're starting on a song. Another person is starting on a new album. This kind of thing can be the start. And I'm going to talk about what the results are after you do this. So if you want more information, you can find it right down below in the comments or in the description, or you can go to positivespinsongs.com/partners and find out about our partners program. I want to talk about some of the projects that we're pitching and finishing. This week alone has been a bit of a finishing week for me. I finished a project with Wolfgang and have already pitched it. That's correct. I have pitched it to a library, and we'll see if that library gets back to us. You have in your mind, or at least I do, an idea of where I'm going to be pitching every album once I get it finished. Like, I know this library is really going to eat this up, or I know this one is, or I want to get it in this one, or I want to find a new library. And so that's what I did. This is going out to a library right now, and I'm waiting to hear. And if I don't hear anything in a few days, it'll go to another library, and we'll see. Matthias and I just finished up a nice tension project and is pitching right now. And also Alita, I just finished that album yesterday and pitched it. And so we will see what happens with that album. And that's another lovely cello album that we did. And one of my libraries who says, hey, why aren't you pitching these cello albums to me? So I pitched that to him, and we will see what happens. Jazz Hymnal is something that's done with various people. It's already been accepted by a library in LA, and I just need to finish it. So that, and Prison Tension, which is another album that Luke and I are working on, that is already been accepted. I don't have to pitch it, just like the last album. There's 2 that have been accepted already. We just got to finish them. There's a lot of work in finishing these projects, but this is what I do all day. Folks, I'm very choked up today. But it's been a week, and the week started out very nicely, and it started with something I didn't expect.
Award. You never mentioned an award.
Yeah, with a trophy and everything.
And I won.
You won!
I just had to show that clip. So this week I received my 3rd Telly Award, which is an award for television things and video things, the Tellys. And this one was for craft use of music in television. I had a song, I just saw it on Love is Blind. I was like, what? And of course, I did find out later that it was on there when I started seeing it on my BMI statement, but I didn't know about it. But sure enough, yeah, I had that song on there. It did really well, and so I entered it in this year's Telly Awards. And this is my 3rd Telly Award. What does this mean to win a Telly Award, to win an award? Well, I tell you what it does for me. It just brings encouragement. It's not to brag about as much as it is to say there are other people that think that this is a deal, that think that this is good. And so it brings encouragement. I also am really excited about it that it has to do directly with sync, directly with a show on an episode of a well-known show. And for me, that is further encouragement that I am going down the right road. It also serves as a little bit of a reminder that the industry agrees with you a little bit, and it feels great. And so very happy about that. Another thing that happened this week, and it's happened to all of us, is it's a BMI payment week. I'm going to quit showing off money on this channel because I think that's it's getting to the point where, first of all, I'm not comfortable doing it. Second of all, I'd rather show you the results of what's happening in a more scientific way. In other words, I want to show you that the growth I see rather than the dollar amounts. But there are a couple things I want to talk about. But first, I want to do a little bit, like I said, a little bit of music income science. So I've got some charts here, and I just want to show them to you as I get going. And the first chart is really kind of showing you how it started for me. And I started, since I had got my first deal, sync library deal, exclusive sync library deal, in late 2020, and then started feeding them music in early 2021, I started seeing my first placements and things that were reported to BMI in the Q1 of 2022. And so you can kind of see here how this goes, how we go from quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3. And the goal, and again, I'm not showing monetary values here. I just want to show you how this kind of is growing. And in your career, if you're getting checks from your PRO, you're going to see this too. Up, about the same, slightly up, down, up higher than it's ever been before, down, up higher than it's been before again, way super high because of one placement over 3 placements on a cable news channel, outlandishly high, like 10 times what I usually get, back down to here. But this down from this large one is still up from this one, okay? and then a down after that, but then an up, which is larger than any other ones except this outlier here. Although you have to figure that outlier in, because there's going to be outliers all the time. And there's going to be months that spike real high, and there's going to be months that spike low. So if we look at this in a different way, and we kind of try to extrapolate this, my friend Chad Jippett helped me do this yesterday, and kind of extrapolate what it's going to look like over time, or at least what these numbers indicate it's going to look like. And you can imagine this red line going all the way down, starting at this first one that I got, this first statement, going up to this one, and just continuing up. Now, here's the fun part. I think that is going to actually be steeper than this. This is conservative based on what's happened so far. But I'm about to double my amount of songs in libraries by the end of this year. We will have doubled. You just saw last week where I talked about 100 songs in sync. I think this line is going to be a lot steeper, only because so much more is going into libraries in 2025 than has ever gone in before. And so by the end of this year, I'm hoping that we're getting close to the 400 or 500 song mark. And if I am, then that should change things and be double what I have now. So I still talk a lot about quality. That quality is job one, but quantity is job two. And it's job 1A, 1B. If it's not 1A, it's 1B. So I think this line, which is very nice, and when I look at it, what it's going to be, and my target date for things becoming livable, like this is one of my main incomes versus not one of my main incomes right now. 2030 is my target. And so if we can be up there in the low five figures is where I want to get to. So that is where we are looking right now and how things are kind of extrapolating. And so I think that's pretty excited. And it just makes me think that this could work. One of these clips is going to get me monetized, I know. So this could happen. This could work. And looking at those numbers and how they extrapolate up might actually work. I did learn one thing this week, and I don't want to show you on my statement just because I don't want to get into numbers and specific numbers, because I feel like showing off numbers is either braggy or sad, depending on who is looking at it. They might look at it and go, those numbers are sad. And some people might look at those numbers and go, gosh, he's just bragging on how much he makes. So I'm not going to do that. But I do want to talk about, I had a song on the show Christmas Light Fights, and you can see that on the Positive Spin Songs YouTube page. And I think I had about 4 plays over the course of this past season. And this particular BMI payment is for the holidays. It's for December, or it's Q4 last year. So you're getting Christmas things. But I got probably 10 times the amount. And the Christmas Light Fights, by the way, mind you, is on ABC, a major network, not Netflix. Meanwhile, on Netflix and on all of the streamers, including Hulu and Prime and Max and some other ones, I got 10 times less than I made from those 4 plays on network television. And I learned this lesson when I had that big spike. If we look at this one, when I had that big spike a few checks ago, this big spike was due to a song that I think was downloaded off Motion Array. I think it's a stock song that was downloaded, because that's the only place it is, version of the national anthem. And they used that, and because of the station it was used on, a cable station that's watched a lot, it did very well. So those kind of spikes can happen, and I think they are more important than the networks versus streaming is something that you should know about. And I have a new library that I'm just working on some new stuff with, and have signed several albums with. and they work directly a lot with what they call the alphabet networks, ABC, CBS, NBC. That's where you want to be. If you can get there, cable doesn't pay bad either. Streaming, not so great. Nathan says, has sync changed over time, and can you share your insights on current and future of sync, especially with what is going on with AI? Well, has sync changed since I've been part of it, which is only about 7 years or so? And really, only since 2020 have I actually had music be signed to libraries. So we're only in year 5 for me, and only in year 3, really, of any consistent income from BMI. It changes all the time. It's a turbulent stock market thing where you never know what is going to happen from check to check as far as BMI or PROs. There is all sorts of stuff. Not much has changed since I heard about it as far as how it works. The future of sync seems like here's the way I look at things. I look at the stock market, and it's very much like the stock market, not the stock music market, but the stock market. If it's going up and it goes down, it goes up and goes down. You saw the chart. It goes up and goes down. It goes up and goes down. But if you look at it over time, you have to look at sync as a long-term proposition, Nathan. It can't be something that you look at short-term, just like stocks. Just like working with the stock market, you have to think of it as something that goes up over time, because you're doing more music, you're putting more music in, you're getting more placements, and the more placements you get, those placements keep paying over the years, and so it keeps stacking up. Now, to answer your question about the future of sync with what is going on in AI, well, here's the biggest problem with people using AI and sync. There's nobody to pay. And until there's somebody to pay, the TV shows are not going to do it. AI is a dirty word around the music industry, around the television industry, around all that. The new contracts that they were signing with actors and all of that kind of stuff. They were talking about AI taking their place. So believe me, Hollywood is very concerned with AI. Music business, very concerned. Spotify is fighting AI very much right now. So I think we're a ways away from AI taking the place of sync people. However, I have no qualms about, instead of using a stock picture, making an AI picture. By the way, Envato, which is what I've used for years to get stock photos and videos, now has AI pictures, has AI video, and now has AI sound. We just got an email this morning. AI music. I have to think that there are going to be low-budget TV shows that just need some background country music and just use AI to make it. And because they are just needing music and they don't care what it sounds like. But I think anyone who is worth their salt right now in the music business or the video business is going to stay away from AI for the time being, until the courts rule who owns what, because TV stations have to pay for the music they're playing. And if there's no one to pay, then they won't pay. So that's what I think about it. Yeah, I hope that helps. Wolfgang's in the house. Wolfgang and I just finished an album this week and started another one. Dude is a machine. I said, hey, can we start a new album, I think last week. And he comes to me, how about this? And next thing I know, he sent me 10 songs to work on. So Wolfgang, you're a machine, man. I really love the way our latest album turned out. It's beautiful. And we are going to find a home for it in the next week. That is for sure. Lewis Moore is in the house. Lewis Moore and I are working on a tune right now. Lewis Moore, I have the beat kind of going, and I think you're going to really like it. It's a lot of fun. Tim says, man, I'm at $0 again on BMI. Dude, I've been there. And it's just a matter of how much you can put up. And here's the deal. Nothing is going to happen at BMI unless you have songs on the radio or songs on television. Or you have songs being performed publicly and that's more probably for classical performances, but you have to keep your chin up, and that means we need to talk and we need to get some music, an album going. Let's get an album going, dude, and get it out there and get something that's useful and get it into a library where it will get used, and so you can start to see BMI go up. That's the only way it's going to go up. Lovely Fishing Rod. People are curious to know your numbers. I'm sure they are, but I'm not going to share numbers. I think the graph shows you that things are going okay. They're not huge. I know somebody who gets mid to high 5 figures every quarter. I know people who get 0 per quarter. I am in the middle of that. Let's just put it that way. Love the Fishing Rod says, do BMI collect only performance royalty? Yes. They collect performance royalties only. They do not collect mechanical royalties. Now, there are some PROs in other countries that collect both. But no, BMI only collects performance royalties from performance on television, from performance on radio, from performance live. Those are the main places they collect. This week, I have just been swinging for the fences. I have, sometimes you just got to take a chance. I was mentioning a fellow who makes 50 to, plus grand per quarter with his BMI check. Talk about making your year. I mean, a lot of us that would make our year or make several years. It's almost unfathomable. Now, you might think, how in the world does he do something like that? Well, he's got almost 3,000 songs in libraries. Do you have 3,000 songs in libraries? That's where quantity comes in. Once you have quality and you're just feeding libraries, and he's writing and delivering a song or two per day that was requested by a library. So unless you are doing that, then don't come to me wondering why you're not making a lot of money. I am every day trying to finish an album and get it to a library and get it signed and get it stemmed and get it ingested into that library so that it can be ready for people to search and find it and be using it on television. So that's what it takes to do this. But I have been swinging for the fences, which is a baseball term for trying to hit a home run. And I've been approaching the big boys. I've been approaching some of the bigger labels. And that's why I was talking about that guy, because he did the same thing. I said, what's your secret? How, do you have a contact? What? He goes, dude, I just emailed them. I emailed them blind and said, here's my work, my body of work. And he goes, I just kept emailing them until they emailed back. So even before he told me that, that's what I've been doing this week. And I've done it before. I continue to do it. I want to get into certain libraries. I've told you about the big 4 libraries, which are BMG and APM and Universal and Warner Chappell. And there's a couple of those. The first 2 I have stuff in. The second 2 I want stuff in. And I want direct deals if possible with them. It's very hard to do, and it takes relationship. And so it might take going to the Production Music Conference and meeting people and just following up and continue. It's what I talked about earlier, just continuing to work and working harder than other people. But I'm also kind of trying to find a sync agent, and I've talked about that on this show a lot, trying to find that right person where I can say, what do you need this week? And they say, I need a killer song with vocals about this. And I do have some sync agent briefs that come to me, but they're not quite private enough. I think you really have to have private briefs. I had a private brief this week. I pitched an album to one of my libraries. They didn't care for it. They said it was a Christmas deal. And they said, I don't think this is for us. And I said, well, what would be for you? What do you need? I said, I have this. I have Christmas classical. He says, that right there, Christmas classical would be interesting. And could we do it with, a certain instrument? And so, boom, there was a project. And now I'm getting a contract on that project. And it just was in my email today. And so I have to sign that project and then produce it and get it out and get it into that library so that those Christmas songs can be found. So this Christmas coming up, those can get used in television shows and different things. And then next May, a year from now, I'm sitting here talking about those songs being in television shows, along with all the other songs that have been in TV shows for the past few years. So this is what I'm talking about. You have to do this. I mean, you can't hit a home run if you're not batting. If you're not at bat and someone's not pitching to you, you're not going to hit anything. So that's a lot of metaphors there. So sorry. But you've got to really try. You've got to, the first library I approached was a BMG library, one of the very first libraries I got signed to. That was amazing, but it wouldn't have happened had I not sent them an email. And I talk about all that kind of stuff, about how to send emails to libraries and stuff in my ebook and my course on sync licensing, Getting in Sync, if you want to look at that. But I believe you just sometimes got to just make big swings. And so I did this week. That was a lot of what I was doing. Also, I learned a lot about, and basically this month, I've learned about buyouts and advances on sync. So here's something to listen to right now. Perk up your ears, my friends. Lend me your ears, as our forefathers would have said. Not that I want your ears, but I want you to listen to this. So there is two kinds of sync licensing, right? There is, or incomes from sync licensing, basically like two. There's actually a lot, but let's talk about the big two, which is the sync payment, which the television could be paying for the use of a song. And they might have $30,000 in their budget for an episode of a show. And at the very end, they get down and I say, we need this one more song. We got $2,000 left. And that would, and if they decide to, they find that at a library, say, we have $2,000 for that song. And they would give you, the library, that $2,000. If it's $2,000, could be 500, could be less, but it could be more. That is the sync payment that goes to the library. Now, there's another kind of sync payment that one of my libraries just told me about this morning, because I asked this question. And that is a blanket license, where they pay a blanket license to be able to use songs from the library without any upfront fees. And then all of those blanket licenses for that library are then, if they're being ethical, they're chopping up that percentage-wise and sending it out in their quarterly or their bi-yearly payments to their writers. So that's the sync side. That's the upfront side that the television stations or the television shows and movies or whatever it is, production companies pay to use that song. Then there's what we were talking about earlier today, and that's the BMI payment, the PRO payment that goes to BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, whoever you're with, PRS. That payment comes to you quarterly, at least BMI pays quarterly. And that's usually the general thing we do. We make music, we give it to the library, they make these deal with us to split sync 50-50, and they take the publishing of the PRO and we get the writers of the PRO, and that's the way it kind of works. I go into this a little bit more clearly in my course and my ebook if you're interested, but that's the usual thing. But I had a tension album that I did with Terry lately. We pitched it to a library, a brand new library that I just started working on some country stuff with. They loved the tension album, and they offered to buy out the sync for it. In other words, in lieu of getting any sync income on the front end, they offered to pay us a certain amount of $1,000. And we took that $1,000. And to be honest, folks, I would take it every time. I think the sync part, the upfront part, here's a hot take. Are you ready? This is a very hot take here that you're catching right now. I think the front end of sync on the library side, not necessarily if you're working with a sync agent who can secure you a $2,000 advance or a $2,000 buyout. But if you're working on the library side, my hot take is I would take a buyout of sync every time. Because, and especially at the point I'm in my career, maybe you wouldn't if you're younger, but I have several reasons for why I would take a buyout. Number one reason is because, first of all, there's no sync guaranteed in the future. There's no PRO guaranteed in the future. But there's certainly no sync upfronts guaranteed in the future. And I've probably seen only 10 to 20% of my income, if that, come from sync payments from libraries. Secondly, I've asked people who make their full-time living on this and the aforementioned people who make 6 figures or more a year on this, and they tell me that the sync side is 10 or 20% tops of what they get from sync. Now, again, I may have people out there steaming out of their head at what I'm saying right now, but guess what? This is my channel, so I'll just say what I think. And what I think is that I would take money today over possible money tomorrow all the time. Now, I wouldn't buy out my writer side because that is savings. That's almost like stock money I'm putting away for another day to be paid like I was paid this week, which was very helpful, the money that I got this week in paying bills and things. So that's what I want for the rest of my life, is that back end. But the front end, it's a little shady sometimes. Not with every library, but it's just, you don't really get statements like you do with your PRO. You don't know if you're getting what you're getting, and there's no really records, at least with the ones that I've seen so far. Now, I'm working with some different libraries now, so they might have way better statements when they pay sync. But my hot take is I'd take a buyout of the sync every time, especially if it's on a song-by-song basis or an album-by-album basis, and I will do that. Just because I'd rather be working for a company. I know a guy who is actually making $1,000 per song as a buyout for sync from a very large company. But he also gets the back end, 100% of the writer side. So who wouldn't take that deal per song? $1,000, $500 per song. Would you take that? $250 per song. Would you take that? I think I would, just because I work fast. If you work slowly, then that may not be very much. But if you're at a place where you work very fast, and if you are a person who's watching this right now or watching this later, and you can tell me in the comments, do you make any money in advances or buyouts? Advances are a little different. They are more advances on future sync royalties that the library might get. So let's say they decide to advance you $250 per song against future royalties. But buyouts are different. Buyouts are just like, we bought you out. You have no more rights to the sync part of this, and you only have what you're going to get in the PRO. I don't know how many of you would agree with that, but I'm telling you right now that at my stage of my career, I would take that all day long. I've always taken money up front for my work. Ever since I started a studio in 2000, ever since I started working for people out of my house in the 90s, I would have them give me a deposit. Or when I worked in a studio, they would pay for their day and leave. They wouldn't leave with a master or any recording unless they paid for the day. So I believe in getting paid day of, if possible. So if I can get paid when I deliver something, one payment when I deliver something, and then have another payment that's possible when it gets used, I'm taking that every time. Tim says, I'd write and produce a whole album for a library. I just don't know what they're not looking for. I had when I met a new library recently, I said, what kind of stuff are you looking for? And he said, not tension. So that helped. Lovely Fishing Rod says, why do you think there is no PRO guarantee in the future? There's no guarantee because you don't know if the songs are going to be used on a television show, which will then trigger a payment to a PRO and pay you. So you don't have a guarantee in this, but you don't have a guarantee in a lot of things. You don't have a guarantee if you start any business you're going to have any sales. So unless you are really confident in your product and you think this is going to get sales, and the library is probably the best determination if you think, because they're not going to take your stuff if they don't think they can get any placements with that. And if you get placements, then the probability is that you are going to get PROs. So a few more things to talk about. First of all, new albums have been requested and are starting, which is exciting, because last week I talked about all the albums that I have going on. Well, guess what? I finished Wolfgang, Matthias, Alida, and then the next two things to finish are various albums and then an album for Luke. Once those are out of the way, guess what? When things go away, I have room for new things in my brain, new things for the list, and new songs to put out. But it didn't just happen that I got to think of those things. Things were thought of for me. Like I talked about earlier, the library that said no to a Christmas album said yes to another Christmas album. And they've already sent me a contract sent in my inbox right now. And I have to finish it by July 15th. There is some new people coming to me. Tim just said he wants to work on something. I had a consult yesterday with Steven, and we're working on a song together as a trial run. I had another conversation by email with someone else who wants to work on stuff. So there is, and they want to start a new album. And so new albums are being requested either by clients or by libraries. And I have a bunch of briefs that I need to get to here in the next few days before they run out, of songs that we have that I didn't imagine that we would have. And that's another thing that you kind of get when you're in when I have a bunch of libraries, I'm in kind of their little system when they tell me they're looking for this, they're looking for that. I have one library tell me they're looking for Halloween. I have another library telling me they're looking for this or that. And then country or whatever it is. And then I have another library looking for something else. Or I have a bunch of writers that I have as partners, and I go to them saying, hey, do you have any of this kind of thing? Because I've got a library wanting it, and could we put together, here's a great example. Wolfgang, Luke, Matthias, a lot of the people who are partners of mine, or have been partners, we worked on something for BMG that was a strings and beats album. And I've seen on TuneSet that we've gotten at least 4 or 5 long placements on the Masters tournament on CBS. Yes, that's what we're talking about right there. And so I don't know exactly which songs have been used. I'd have to do some research, but dang, that kind of thing is cool. But those came about because those people were my partners. And we were working together on a weekly basis, emailing back and forth. Do you have anything? And they sent me stuff, and I finished it and mixed it and mastered it and pitched it and did all the things that we have to do to get it to the library. So I'm starting to have to pitch less and get commissioned more by libraries. And that means that you are likely getting commissioned if you're part of my network or you're working with me. And then I can ask them, do you need, it's just like I did with that library about the Christmas thing this week. I said, do you need Christmas? And he says, yeah, but it's got to be in by August 15th because we got to put it out. So, okay, what do you need? And you get into these conversations with your libraries and where you're serving them in a way that you're giving them what they want and what they need, and or they are requesting things from you. Do you by chance have this? Well, luckily, I work on just about every style, so I usually have what they want. So let's change this from talking about me to talking about you. How will you advance in sync? What is the thing that is going to help you the most in your next thing? Where and you can put this in the chat, you can put this in comments. Tell me what is your biggest need right now? And what is going to be your climb? Where are you on the climb? And what's going to be the next level for you? And this is for successful people like Wolfgang, or this is for people like Tim who feel like they're at zero again. What do you need? What's the thing that you need most? Is it better songs? Is it more songs? Is it more accepted to libraries? Is it more placements on TV? We talked about this last week. Who do you need to work with? Well, first of all, it's me. It's me, right? It's definitely probably me. Or it could be somebody else. It could be Dave's got a great community at 52Qs. Jesse's got a great community at Sync Academy. Everybody has there's a lot of people who are working with a lot of people. I'm just one guy, and I work with a limited number of partners versus I think they work with hundreds of people at a time. I personally, since I'm working so hands-on with other writers, and we are putting songs together and getting them in libraries one album at a time. I can only work with about a dozen to 20 people at a time. But I do have a couple openings this summer because a couple people dropped out. They're about to be filled, but come on, let's do some work. Do you need libraries? Well, that's another thing that I can provide. And of course, if you want to find out more about all of this sync stuff, you can, and how to find libraries and all that kind of stuff, you can look at my ebook or my course, Getting in Sync. And I'll put a link to that. There's a link to that in the below, but I'll put it a little higher up in the description if you want to look at that. Do you need a sync agent? Well, I think we all do. What if we could all find somebody who has the pulse of television right now and has the pulse of music supervisors and says, boy, I know a show that's looking for this kind of thing and this kind of thing. Well, we'd all love to find that person. Do you need better quality? Do you need better quantity? Give me a thumbs up if one of these things is something that you need. And because I know it is. I know it has been for me in my career. And I know now I feel like quantity is the thing. That's why it's so important for me. Listen, I could sit here and work on my own albums and have 100% of the PRO. But instead, I'm working with partners and making 50% of the PRO. Sometimes less if we bring someone else into the picture. But to me, it's more about quantity than owning everything myself. And I think sometimes we live in this world where we think, oh, if I'm not the 100% owner of everything, I've heard you should never give up percentage. Listen, you should give up what you need to give up in order to have success, and not hold on to everything so tightly, and not be so precious about your music and your percentages and all that kind of stuff. It's all, if someone like me is coming online and saying, here's the way I am getting my trajectory to go up as far as royalties and success and get buyouts and all these things, then you certainly can do that too. Let me just see if I've got any other questions here before I kind of end. How will you advance in sync? Do you have what do you need? Nathan says strategies that work. Well, the strategy is simple. The strategy is make quality music. And if you're not making quality music that's getting responses from libraries and different things like that, then that's the first step. You need to find someone who will help you make better quality music. Partners that I have go from anywhere from people who do, like Wolfgang, who bring me half finished or 75% finished things, and then I add that extra 25%, and then I do all of the mixing and the pitching and the delivery and all that kind of stuff, and the contract work and all that stuff. That's kind of, I'm kind of like half library a little bit. But first of all, you need great sounding stuff. Then you need a good amount of it. And if you can't make quality on your own, that's getting responses, and you can't get quantity that you send out, then you need help. You need somebody who can help you. That's the first strategy. You can't start any of this without music, and then to some extent you can't really see growth until you see some quantity. You've got to see quality, and then you've got to see quantity. And if you don't have those things, that's strategy number one. You got to start that. And if you need someone to help you, then you need to get in touch with that person through email, hint, hint, in the description below, and let's partner or find a partner, whoever it is. Strategy number two is rinse and repeat. Or I guess strategy number two would be getting into a library. But with me, my specific partner program includes the libraries because I have them looking for projects, and so I need partners all the time. So my strategy is to create a lot of quality. It always has been, and now is quantity, and then getting it to libraries, getting it placed, and then start it all over again, Nathan. It's a very simple process. I almost called this, I was going to do a whole thing about today's podcast called Sync Licensing. It's so simple, and it really can be. If you're creating quality music and you're able to continually create it and create more and work with somebody who either is a library that will take your music or someone who can get your music to whoever can get it to the TV show that's going to use it and put it on air. That's what you need. That's the strategy you need to be working on. I hope that helps. Looks at the legend says, I think it's understanding what they actually want. Sometimes it feels like shooting a dart at a board blind. We all make all sorts of music, but we're never sure what they want or what will sell. Well, actually, we do know what they want. Jesse has a great new app that he is pushing on his channel. If you haven't gone over to Sync My Music, you need to look at Jesse's app. But really all his app does is tell you what's doing well on television and what's getting placed and what library placed it. And that could be useful. I still think the answer to your question is not about what they need, but what you make. In other words, you make all sorts of music. I make all sorts of music. But when I come up with an album, my first thought is this going to be useful behind a television scene? What use case will this have? And then then if I think I have an album that will, let's say I've got an album for a Cajun, a bunch of Cajun music, thinking, oh, this will go behind, and I happen to know a library looking for this right now, and they would love Cajun music, and you do Cajun music, and it's vocals, and it's got all sorts of accordion, and it's got the polka thing going on, and all the Zydeco stuff happening. While that might be one of your favorite styles, it also is something that's very needed behind some of these shows. As you hear Zydeco used in sync all the time behind TV shows. It's kind of upbeat. It's really good for instrumental music behind scenes of stuff that's happening. But you don't need to think of it like shooting a dart at a dartboard. What you need to do is specialize in what you're really good at and do that thing. And or watch television shows and find some music that they're doing and say, wow, that is something I could do. I need to do that. And then you need to work backwards and see who is the library that came from, or what libraries are interested in that kind of music. But you're going to have better luck going to them with a finished album of 10 songs of that. And sometimes I will do like with the Tension album with Luke, we sent a 5-song EP to the library. They said yes. That was 2 months ago. We still haven't finished it. We've got to finish that in order for it to really get into the TV shows. You can't get, if it doesn't get in the library, because we didn't finish it, being accepted is useless. So the whole point is to get things finished and get things done and then submit them to libraries. You submit a 10-song album that's very useful for that library, well, it's going to be a no-brainer that then you get into that library, because that library is looking for for finished products that they can just ingest. It's a no-brainer. If an album comes in they love, it's 10 songs, they're like, great, let's sign it. That just happened to me. And so, but if I go with them with 5 and they say, I'd love to sign it, but I need 5 more, and then you take 6 months to finish it, like I have been guilty of before, then the odds go down. So the shooting on the dartboard is a little bit of that. What's going on here? But I think you can see what I'm talking about here. Tim says, I need a partner to help keep me motivated. I need a concept to work on, and I need libraries. Well, we need to talk. I have all that. When I meet a new partner, the first thing I say is, what is the brand, the ideas you like to do, or the type of music you like to do? Just like Licks of the Legend was saying. We all make all sorts of music, but let's pick one. If you make talk about your dartboard, if you make a bunch of music and you do well at all of them, put them all up on a dartboard and throw a dart, and whichever one you hit, make an album of that. And when before you make it, say, is this something I think could go well behind some TV shows, and what TV shows would it be? And so that's something to think about. But Tim needs a partner to keep you motivated. Heck, I need partners to keep me motivated. when I know I have a partner who is working with me and sometimes paying me to work with them on a weekly basis, we work weekly. Every Monday morning, I am sending you an email saying, Tim, here's what we're working on this morning or this week. What we're trying to get done is finished the first 2 songs that we started, or we're trying to get all the ideas on the board so we know how to start them all, or I need starts from you on this and this and this, and I'm finishing this and this and this week. We are working, and especially I like to try to get albums done in about 2 months, and that might be like crazy for you, but with me as your exponential motivator, we can do it for sure. And then we can certainly, once we got that concept and we've finished and we've produced it, then I have the libraries to pitch it to. And that's pretty much a no-brainer. They're just sitting there waiting for finished albums. And then there are going to be some that might even pay buyouts of the sync ahead of time. It's not a promise. A lot of people have asked me that in the past week since I mentioned it. But I feel like I have to mention it because it's a thing that's happened to me with both these first 2 albums. So, but that's only with 1 library out of 10, or out of any, really, that I've met. Lix the Legend says, I need to know what type of music libraries actually want and need, and what production level does it need to be? Well, I can answer the second half really easily. The highest that's possible. There is no room for low production level with libraries. I mean, some libraries may take it, but in order for it all the way down the line, not just the library, but the music supervisor, the director of the show, the editor in the film room who's going to be editing your song to the show, they need to listen to that stuff and go, whoa, this is really nice. This is well done. Sometimes the library will have an editing guy or a mix person that has to deal with it. Everything needs to be high quality. Now, as far as what type of libraries, what do libraries actually want? Libraries want everything. And the way you know this is you go to the library and you look at all the albums they have. What albums do they already have? What kind of albums are they working on? This is kind of basic 101, how do I find music library stuff. You go and you do a search. It's called Google. I'm sure you've heard of it. And you type in music production libraries and you go to those music production libraries first before you really check out libraries. Make sure that you're able to send music to them. If you're trying to do all this yourself, you're not coming through someone with the pre-established libraries that I have relationships with, and you're trying to do this on your own, make sure you go to a library that has a way to contact them and says, we are taking submissions. Don't waste your time on libraries that aren't taking submissions. But second of all, I mean, you can swing for the fences. I talked about that earlier. But second of all, after you find that, find some styles that they've already done and do a great album or a great 5 songs in that style and email them and see if they're interested in working with you and if they'd like a full album of this. It's a great way to find out what they want and if they want it. Love the Fishing Rod says, how many hours do you put in daily on making music for sync libraries? This week it's been about, on the days I did not go work out, it's been about 8 hours a day. So I'm pretty serious about this. I've been in album finish mode, and I feel like the rest of this year is going to be album finish mode because we have so many albums, so many libraries waiting for albums and accepting them and ingesting them that it's just my full-time job. Now, I do some other things. I do some help for other clients where I do some marketing for them from time to time, and I also work with a few artists who I do tracks for that aren't necessarily sending that to sync. But, geez, dude. It's so much of my day. I will sit in this room to my wife's how do I say this right? To my wife's chagrin, that sitting in here all day long working on music for sync, going from one song to the other. Yesterday, it was all cello music that we were finishing. Earlier in the week, it was Wolfgang's album that we were finishing, all beautiful music, but also the week before that was a horror album that I was finishing, an Intention album that I was finishing. She's not that crazy to have to hear horror music floating through the house or tension music floating through the house. But if it was up to me, I would sit here from about 9 to 6 every day, just like a regular job, sitting here working. If I don't get the songs done so that I can make very nice presentations to show off to libraries and get those songs in, and then sometimes it's not making music, but it's getting the music ready for the library, which means making stems and putting things in the Dropbox. I also have to do a lot of pre-production for projects where I'm sending stuff to players, to singers, to all this kind of stuff. So all of that happens in this chair, right in this room, all day long. This is all that I do is work on music full time. I do now take 2 days a week and go over and work out, which takes 2 to 3 hours of my day. And I feel really guilty about that, which I probably shouldn't. So thanks. Good question. Thanks. And Lick says, thanks for all the great answers. Where you are welcome. Well, I hope this has helped folks today. I do sit here all by myself, and I make music and do stuff for clients and do stuff for partners all day long. And there's nobody to talk to except my wife, who knows all this stuff and is tired of hearing about it. But I just had to share some of this stuff with you today because it's stuff that's happened to me over the course of this week. And that's basically all this channel can be for, is sharing what I do and also offering to help you if you need help. Because as of now, I am still available to help people and work with partners. And I can't imagine that I'll ever stop working with partners. All the music that I've made over the past 25 years of my 30 years of my music career has been working with others, has been working with players and singers and now it's co-composers and co-conspirators in these albums. And so that's what I do. And if you're interested in that, then get in touch with me. Just go to positivespinsongs.com/partners and check out the partners program. Also check out positivespinsongs.com itself. That'll let you know what kind of quality that I do. And I think you'll see that the quality level is pretty good. I think but that again, it's not just me. That's me and partners. That's me and players. That's me and engineers. That's me and singers. That's me and someone else. A partner is involved. And I really highly believe in partners. And Jack says it really well here. Success is shared. I couldn't have put a finer point on this whole deal today and the Positive Spin Partners program. Thank you for that, Jack. I appreciate it. All right, everybody. Well, that's going to do it for me for today. I think that's quite enough. Hope you had a good week. I did. Sorry to have to go so long today and talk about it, but it just felt like stuff I needed to get off my chest and talk about. And I hope it's helped you today. And we will see you next time on the Make Music Income podcast. Have a great weekend. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.